Today, we are unpacking the July 24th, 2026 edition of the Waldenstrom Digest. And, if you're listening to this, you already know we aren't just dealing with some simple rundown of community announcement.
No, definitely not.
No, we are looking at a literal masterclass in how a highly educated ecosystem navigates Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. It's this incredible balancing act of cutting-edge oncology with just incredibly sophisticated human support. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and that 99% statistic you just mentioned, it's really the perfect lens for all this material. Yeah, because we are looking at a patient population that is essentially crowdsourced a medical degree just to survive. And you see that immediately when you look at the global research level right now.
For sure, especially with the IWMF 13 coming up.
Exactly. The 13th International Workshop on Waldenstrom Macroglobulinemia, it's happening in Palm Springs this October. And historically, these massive medical conferences, they're closed loops,
Totally. Just doctors talking to doctors.
Right. Researchers present these highly technical data sets to other researchers. Clinicians take notes. And then maybe, years later, a distilled, simplified version of that science trickles down to the patient sitting in an exam room.
But this time, they're actually hosting a free patient highlight session, which is a first, right?
It is, yeah. It's this very deliberate effort to take those dense scientific updates and immediately recap them into practical takeaways for the patients themselves.
And looking at the actual science coming out right now, like Professor Christian Busk's recent presentation from the European Hematology Association Congress, the EHA, we need all the translation we can get.
We really do. What's fascinating here is that the strategic evolution in how we attack this disease, it's accelerating at a breakneck pace.
Yeah, it really feels like it.
Right. Professor Busk's updates focused heavily on identifying patients at a higher risk of relapse, improving long-term survival rates, and, crucially, the emergence of BTK degraders.
Okay, let's pause there, because we need to make sure we really understand the mechanism of a BTK degrader. The standard of care for a while has been BTK inhibitors, right?
Correct.
So if I think about a traditional BTK inhibitor, like, say, putting a heavy steel boot on a car's tire to stop it from moving, is a BTK degrader like completely dismantling the engine so the car can never run again?
That is actually a fantastic analogy. If we take that car analogy just a step further, yes, that is precisely the difference. So Bruton's tyrosine kinase, or BTK, it's a protein that acts as the primary engine. It signals these cancer cells to survive and multiply.
Okay.
Now, an inhibitor binds to that protein and blocks its function. The boot on the tire, it stops the progression. But cancer is remarkably adaptable under pressure.
Right, it finds a way around it.
Exactly. Over time, due to the evolutionary pressure of the drug itself, the cancer cell mutates. It physically changes the molecular shape of the BTK protein.
So the boot doesn't fit the tire anymore.
Correct. The cell essentially slips the boot off, and the cancer starts progressing again. The patient relapses. But a BTK degrader is a completely different molecular strategy. It doesn't just block the protein. It actively tags the BTK protein for destruction by hijacking the cell's own natural garbage disposal system.
Wait, really? It uses the cell against itself?
Yes. It forces the cell to shred the target protein entirely. So you are sending the engine to the scrapyard, essentially. This offers a highly effective, much more permanent molecular intervention for patients whose disease has mutated and become resistant to traditional inhibitors.
That is a fundamental shift in the battlefield. And, for anyone wanting to dive deep into that specific EHA presentation, the videos are available, and they even include versions in German, which is great for accessibility.
Absolutely.
But, to even grasp concepts like cellular garbage disposal and protein tagging, it really requires that heavily educated patient base we talked about earlier.
Which brings us right back to those quiz scores.
Yes. The community has been running these educational forum sessions over the summer. They've featured panels like the Mission in Motion, the Robert Kyle Awards with Dr. Zachary Hunter, and these complex sessions on navigating healthcare technology.
All very high-level stuff.
Super high level. And then they tested the community. So on the WM Basics quiz, the average score was 96%. On initial treatment options, 90%. And on the WM Complications quiz, 99%. And they are building a seriously impressive arsenal. Look at the session on AI with Lisa Porat and Ann Reddy, the Empowered by AI session. Patients are now utilizing artificial intelligence to decipher complex blood panel results.
It's incredible to see.
They're feeding dense medical journals into AI language models to get plain English summaries. And they're preparing hyper-specific questions for their oncology appointments.
They are essentially weaponizing technology to advocate for themselves. I mean, think about the modern medical system. A typical oncology check-in might last, 15 minutes?
If you're lucky.
Exactly. That is nowhere near enough time for a doctor to explain the nuances of a BTK mutation from scratch. By using AI to prep beforehand, the patient ensures that those precious 15 minutes are spent making high-level strategic decisions about their care rather than just getting caught up on basic lab values.
That is such a smart use of the tech. But, even with a 99% understanding of the science and an AI-optimized list of strategic questions, there is still a massive roadblock.
Yeah, the logistics.
Right. All of that brilliant education is useless if you can't actually access the cutting-edge treatments in the real world.
The jarring transition from theoretical science to the practical logistics of healthcare.
Exactly. And this is where Megan McGrath's advice becomes so critical. So she's a nurse practitioner and a clinical trial nurse navigator with Blood Cancer United. And her primary directive to patients is to start a conversation with a clinical trial nurse navigator much earlier in the process.
Yes. Don't wait until you desperately need one.
Right. It's kind of like buying a map before you enter a dense forest, rather than waiting until you're completely lost and panicking. But why are patients historically so hesitant to look at clinical trials until they've literally exhausted every other possible option?
Well, this raises an important question about how we view trials as a society. It really comes down to a legacy of misunderstanding. For decades, the general public viewed clinical trials as a last resort.
Like you only do it when nothing else works.
Exactly. There's this lingering myth of being a guinea pig or the terrifying fear of being given a placebo instead of a real life-saving treatment.
Right. Nobody wants a sugar pill when they have cancer.
Exactly. But in modern oncology, especially in rare blood cancers, a clinical trial is often your gateway to accessing tomorrow's medicine today.
It's like a VIP pass to the future of science.
It really is.
But how does connecting with a nurse navigator early actually change a patient's trajectory? Like, what specific logistical nightmares are they bypassing?
Well, if your current treatment stops working, say your cancer mutates around that BTK inhibitor we discussed earlier.
The boot on the tire.
Right. When that happens, you do not want to spend 3 months trying to understand trial eligibility criteria, geographic travel requirements, or complex enrollment phases while your disease is actively progressing.
Oh, God, no. That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. A nurse navigator handles that bureaucratic heavy lifting. If you already have that map, you know exactly which trial you qualify for, where the closest testing site is, and how to enroll the moment you need it. It keeps the patient firmly in the driver's seat of their own treatment timeline.
Assuming, of course, that the health insurance industry doesn't just rip the steering wheel completely out of their hands.
Ah, yes. The ultimate administrative hurdle.
Truly. I love the idea of mapping out options, but I have to be honest here. Like, getting into trials or getting care means fighting insurance. You map out a plan, and then your insurance company immediately throws up a brick wall.
Oh, absolutely. Systemic barriers are a massive burden.
The red tape is just exhausting.
It is. But proactive education is your best defense against a denied claim. That's why the July 30th NORD webinar is so critical.
NORD being the National Organization for Rare Disorders.
Yes. They're hosting a webinar specifically targeting how to overcome rare disease insurance barriers. Because understanding how the bureaucracy operates gives you the leverage to fight it.
It really takes a village to fight that system, which is why community support is so critical. And that brings us to Sharon Piotrowski. She's officially retiring this month after an 18-year career as a personal trainer. 18 years.
That's an amazing run.
Her last class was July 30th, but she is still going to volunteer to lead the Sarasota support group. The ecosystem also has to expand outward to figure out who is supporting the supporters.
A very overlooked group.
Blood Cancer United just released a new series of caregiver workbooks. And Linda Tritek, who co-leads the WM Caregivers support group, had this quote where she called caregivers, quote, the silent glue that can hold everything together.
It's a powerful image.
It is, and I appreciate the sentiment of acknowledging their vital role. And the way this community designs those therapeutic spaces is evolving rapidly. We are seeing a distinct shift from generic support to hyper-targeted community building.
Yes, definitely.
There's a young WM affinity group
Yeah.
for those diagnosed before retirement age, which is a very different experience, and a people of color affinity group.
Both so important.
But the one that really caught my eye is the UK Bournemouth and District group. They are having a special in-person event with Dr. Helen McCarthy. But They aren't meeting in a sterile hospital conference room.
No, they're not.
They are meeting in a forest at the Wild Reset Woodlands in New Forest, England. I just love that.
That juxtaposition is truly beautiful, isn't it? You have a community utilizing advanced artificial intelligence to parse blood panels and discussing targeted genetic degraders, yet recognizing that immense biological healing comes from simply sitting together under the canopy of trees.
It feels very grounding.
It is.
But of course, going for a serene walk in the forest to lower your stress is a lot easier when you aren't terrified of going bankrupt from your medical copays.
Yeah, that will ruin a forest walk pretty quickly. Financial toxicity is a literal clinical side effect of cancer treatment. The stress of impending medical debt can be just as debilitating as the physical symptoms of the disease itself.
Which is why the infrastructure of this community ensures the financial safety net is clearly visible. They provide direct links to multiple financial aid funds open for U.S. patients. There's HealthWell, Cancer Care, Blood Cancer United, and Total Assist.
It is a critical piece of the ecosystem.
But once the financial safety net and the community safety net are secured, the journey inevitably returns to the individual's own body. Specifically, how you manage the physical toll of the disease on a daily basis.
Right, the day-to-day reality.
The Digest talks about mindfulness-based interventions, or MBIs, and how they are highly effective at reducing both pain severity and the distress associated with chronic pain. Though they are careful to note this is a complementary intervention, not a replacement for standard medical care.
That's a vital distinction.
Definitely. But just as patients have to protect their physical and mental well-being, they also have to protect their digital lives.
Which is an unfortunate reality we have to talk about.
It is. The ecosystem also includes a stark scam and phishing alert, reminding the community to be highly skeptical of unexpected emails or texts asking for passwords or banking info.
Protecting the community's digital safety is an essential extension of protecting their physical health.
Wow. So we've gone from the microscopic mechanics of cellular garbage disposal to the weaponization of AI, to the macroeconomic realities of insurance and financial aid, to walking through an English forest, to protecting your bank account from phishing scams.
We really covered a lot of ground today.
We did.
The volunteer trainers, the therapeutic space for caregivers, and the simple act of a community standing together in a forest.
What a beautiful thought to end on. To everyone listening, keep learning, keep leaning on your community, and we will see you on the next deep dive.